The former Sussex priest Vickery House has been found guilty of abusing a string of young men. It's emerged that 3 of his victims had also been abused by the disgraced former Bishop Peter Ball. An Old Bailey jury found that House had sexually assaulted 4 people, the youngest aged 14, in the 1970s and 80s.
Just 3 weeks ago, the former Bishop of Lewes, Peter Ball, was sentenced to 32 months in prison for assaulting young men. Vickery House worked closely with Ball on a scheme for aspiring clerics called Give a Year to Christ. Charlie Rose reports.
It was a scheme for young people who wanted to get closer to God. Spend a year in rural Sussex with the Bishop of Lewes, Peter Ball. Ably assisting him, this charismatic young vicar, Vickery House, originally from the United States.
Because you've got nice people like Vic and me, you see.
Running through the 70s and 80s, in 1985 the cameras were invited in for this documentary. But earlier this month, Bishop Ball was jailed after admitting abusing young men on the scheme. Some of them were also targeted by his deputy, Rev House.
That it's quite rare to find an abuser who will work in isolation and only work on one victim. It's much more common to have networks, so you'll have networks of abusers and networks of victims as well.
House admitted in court making sexual advances to a number of young men on the Give a Year to Christ scheme. His defence was that rather than assaults, they were approaches he had thought would be welcomed. They weren't. But he also assaulted a 14-year-old boy while a curate in Devon. And this afternoon, reacting to that verdict, that victim told me he was pleased and relieved that after 45 years, what happened has been brought out and dealt with. In Sussex, the 2 men, Bishop Ball in Litlington and Rev House in the neighbouring parish of Berwick, had a huge influence over their young charges, supposedly guiding them closer to God. But they took advantage of their position. Now Vickery House has been found guilty of 5 counts of indecent assault. He'll be sentenced later this week.